And we are live. Welcome, guys, to Short Convos with myself as Miralai and
JC, we're a light Cashman.
JC. We have some unfinished business from last week, I do believe.
We do. We have some unfinished business. What we start with, numbers or Attenborough?
Oh, I think Attenborough's the big one. So let's do, I think numbers we can kind of get through a bit quicker and then we'll get on to Attenborough. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good to me. I don't know if you researched it, but I had a little look up on numbers. What I found was numbers should be distinguished from numerals, the symbols used to represent numbers. So I think actually last week, were we not talking about numerals rather than numbers?
I think in most instances, yes, we were talking about numerals. But is that when we were talking about the conversation, the idea of it being a higher level of communication?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
And then, we've always had a thing with numbers, and also I thought this was interesting what I read. The association with number, it kind of goes with what we were saying last week. For instance, the number 13 is associated as an unlucky number, not a value or a mathematical quite. And like a million, you say a million, you expect in your mind it's a big group of something. So I thought that was quite interesting. The idea of numbers and the process of counting goes back far beyond history began to be recorded. There is some archaeological evidence that suggests that humans were counting as far back as 50,000 years ago. So, and then my last fact for this week, they believe, according to history, early humans started drawing first, i.e. on walls and caves. Secondly, script, so, written, and then finally numbers, as in the digits.
Interesting. I was wondering, I didn't get to do any research on it, but I was wondering if any animals, and I'm guessing they can, count and be aware of numbers, right? Because I'm sure with monkeys and things like that, they must know when there's 2 balls or 3 balls or 3 sweets or 1 sweet. There must be something there in terms of animal kingdom and numbers.
Yeah, I don't know it. Well, I suppose I've seen a animal count their young.
Yeah, that was my next example was, like a litter of kittens or something. A mother would be aware if one went missing. And I don't know if that's a thing. And if we're talking like 9, then that certainly is some kind of awareness of the number of things present.
Yeah.
And I don't know if things like apes ever count with their fingers. You'd ever say, I have no idea.
It's have to tell us.
Going down a rabbit hole, but we'll have to have a look at it and find out. But I think that's a nice segue into our next conversation, because you were very passionate about this David Attenborough documentary you watched. So I had to go see what was getting you all worked up, and fair enough.
Okay, you got it. What did you get then, Az?
Fair enough. Well, to be honest, I watched it and I spent most of it just doing this. Yeah.
Smiling.
Yeah, because we're quite aware of this, me and Anne. Like, she's a vegetarian, so she brought a lot of attention to me from that food point of view. And he talks about the idea of going a bit more plant-based and the agricultural costs of eating so much meat like we do. And we've always tried to be very conscious with things like recycling and generally doing our little part to care for the environment as best we can. But he was talking big picture, and it was quite upsetting. And I think the hardest part for me, the bit that got me the most, spoiler alert for anyone who's not seen it yet, go watch it before you get into this podcast, where it showed the numbers turning over for each 10 years or whatever it was, every period of life that he was discussing, and just watching those numbers just go the wrong way constantly. It's heartbreaking, because that's not going to change anytime soon.
Yeah. What I found staggering, which I had no comprehension of, like you're saying about the meat, is 30% of the living beings on this planet are us. 60% is what feeds us. And that was like leaving 10% for the rest of the world. It's like that really blew my head.
Yeah.
And we didn't talk about it at all last week, did we? Because I don't want to.
No, we said we'd hold off. So no.
Yeah, so I'm not eating meat during the week now. I'm not
Wow,
going.
that
I'm not
far.
going. I'm not going completely veggie. Just because I've had a personal relationship with food over the years, and I've been vegetarian before, and yeah, I haven't had the best relationship with food, let's say, and I'm in a
Sure.
good place and a good relationship with food. For instance, I'm eating well and everything like that, so I don't want to completely go. But yeah, I've made a point. Like I don't eat sweets during the week, for instance. Now I'm not going to eat meat during the week.
Yeah, I will say because that was the only part of the documentary where I bit back a little bit against it, in the sense that a lot of research and studies has been done into what it would look like if we all went vegan. And really the amount of land it would take to plant the amount of plants that would be needed there, it brings its own set of issues, like soil health and all of these problems and things like pesticides and all of that from eating plants. So I don't know if a vegan diet and going all the way is the solution, but I think something like what you're saying, and we like, I often eat vegetarian just because Anne is vegetarian and we'll have a veggie meal. I don't have a thing where I have to have meat with every single meal. And I think that's a big part of it. Is some people, it's not a meal unless it's got an animal on it.
What I took from it all was the like this conversation was saying about meat is it's just completely out of balance,
Yes.
and that's where the problem lies. And for instance, Laura, my wife, she's been vegetarian, speech marks for a while, but I suppose I would refer to myself in the same way now as a free eater. So rather than a vegetarian, a free eater, and I choose not to eat meat during the week. If we go on a holiday, if we go away, if we're traveling, or like there was some leftovers from the kids' dinner that I took for lunch, it's like I eat it. It's not like, oh, I'm a veggie, I'm breaking the code or anything.
Yeah, it's like we say it all the time, the balance thing. People are just, it's just too easy, and people are just so excessive now, and there's no consciousness to it. I think that's the saddest part. The one thing I can't stand is people who eat meat, but they won't eat meat off the bone because it feels too much like an animal. And that for me is like, you've got such a disassociation with your food, because you should know that, yeah, that was an animal and it died for you so that you can eat it.
You were
And you
eating
should,
little piggy.
you should come to peace with that. And if you can't come to peace with that, you need to have a conversation with yourself about what you're putting into your body. Because if it has to look like a blob for you to feel comfortable with eating it, then that's not right, is it? It's interesting. I didn't think we'd get so much onto the topic of diet and vegetarianism from it, but I think it was a huge part of what he was saying, in terms of just the damage it's doing to the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're responsible in the biggest part for damaging the animal kingdom, the wild, by eating it, basically. That's
Yeah, in
what.
terms of like the action an individual could take today that would make a difference, I think
Yeah.
that would be the most significant one. And it's, again, you don't have to go vegetarian, don't need to go vegan, but you should start becoming a bit more conscious. I don't know if you saw the law that got passed in the UK very recently.
Which one?
It's basically meaning now, we had a law that was protecting us from having meat imported that had pesticides on it, that had growth hormone and all of this stuff. And that's basically been abolished now. So if you're eating any meat that's from another country, there is now no process it needs to go through to ensure that it hasn't been exposed to
Wow. Never knew
chemicals.
that.
Yeah, it got very quietly put through very recently. So all the more reason that if you're going to eat meat, to go for free range, to go for locally sourced, to support local farmers, and yeah, not to reach out and just eat the cheapest thing. I think that's what you hear a lot. This is while we're on the topic, people say, oh, well, I can't eat this organic chicken because it costs 5 times as much. Why is it so expensive? And I say to them, your question's wrong. It's, why is that one so cheap? Why
Yeah.
can you buy a whole animal for £2.50? That's not right. You shouldn't be able to buy a whole bird for £2.50. That's the problem. You shouldn't be able to go in a shop and get 8 chicken wings for £2. That's what's wrong, not the £10 for the organic bird. And yeah, don't eat that much chicken. Eat a lot less, but when you eat it, eat a proper animal that's run around and eaten grass and not been pumped full of water and chemicals and hormones.
Yeah, so well, going back to the actual documentary itself, like the message, and obviously, that's what resonated, and you sort of sit there at the end, taken back by it. But I really take note and really enjoyed the documentary as a whole. I think it was just so well scripted and put together. I'm sure David Attenborough has a big part to play in that. He's not just the narrator. And then there's a team that we don't know about, from the cameraman to a woman to everything else. But I just thought it was very well put together, because I sat down not expecting to watch that documentary. We were sitting down with the girls to have a TV dinner, and it was like, oh, let's just put on David Attenborough because, you get to see some wildebeest or something like that. And I think that in itself was good, because it caught you somewhat a little off guard. But I thought the whole package of the documentary was so well, pieced together. So it started with him, basically saying why we should listen to it, because he's 90 whatever years old. He's travelled the world however many times over, and he's seen in his lifetime these things happen. And then he did give the doom and gloom. He gave, and like you said, those numbers were going up. But what I thought was really good about it was it got to a point where he then changed that, and they gave the examples of the fishing. So, for instance, where countries are now designated no fish areas, all the fish have come back, and it's actually helped populate the fishing areas. And he started to give off more examples, and it finished actually quite positive, in the sense of, you've got to do something, but this is where we can be, with actually quite little effort. And looking at the guy and listen to him, it's like, we need something, like, he probably never would want to do it, or the right person anyway, but we need people like that in political power, that will, understand a problem, and then look to fix it in a constructive way, rather than just sort of, in my opinion, they're just sort of trying to get each other down all the time.
Yeah, very much so. The great part of it, when he's speaking at that summit, and the woman who's leading it, and she says, you could retire and just, enjoy your golden years. You've led a great life. And he even says, he goes, I kind of wish sometimes I could not be involved in all of this, because it's heavy stuff. But he obviously feels compelled from what he's seen. And it's so powerful coming from him, because like you said, he was there when he was 20, 30, and that's like 70, 80 years ago. And he's been back every 10, 20 years and has physically seen the change.
Well, he said they sailed to an island that you couldn't get to because of glacier. It's like, in that period, it's like, It's mad.
Yeah, I think that's I don't know why it doesn't get through to us. I guess it's because we're not flooding, or we're not dying from sun rays just yet. So we don't take it as seriously as we should, because we don't see it in the day to day. But it's happened so rapidly. Like, when you think about it, all the damage has been done in the last 100 or so years. And it's only accelerating with more population, more cars, more fumes.
Eating more, yeah.
Yeah, more eating, more. It's we're getting very efficient at destroying the planet, which is a really messed up thing to say.
Well, but it comes around again on several things, but like he highlights it at the end, we're destroying the planet, but we're not, in a sense, harming it, because it will recover. Like, he went to Chernobyl, didn't it?
Yeah.
We're destroying our chance of survival, is what we're doing. That's what he said.
Yeah, we're going to bring ourselves to extinction. If that's where it would go to, and give Earth enough time, and it will recover and heal from anything we've done to it. I mean, we've had it with all the planes being put down because of COVID, and the atmosphere is all clearing up, and the sky is all clearing up, because just a few months of not all these planes in the sky. So yeah, the planet, it's kind of like the planet's like your lungs, and we just keep smoking. If you stop
Yeah.
smoking, it'll eventually clean itself out through its natural processes. But we just seem to be smoking more and more and more and doing more and more damage. But like you said, it does finish on a gleam of hope that if we make some changes and we move in a certain direction, that we can. And, you know, electric cars are starting to become more of a thing. But until those electric cars that are being plugged into that outlet are not being powered by fossil fuels being burnt
Yeah.
at things, and that's what I mean. It's such a bigger issue than people at home. So I think a lot of people think, well, I can't do anything. But you can, but we all have to do it for it to collectively mean something and be worth a damn.
Yeah. And then, you know, the powers that be, it's what they can do, isn't it? Then that supports the further masses of it all.
Yeah, I'm really glad he did it because, you know, we all know he's going to go very soon. You know, hopefully he lives to 100 and has a healthy, lovely life. But he's lived a long time, and he will go, and he will always be remembered as a treasure. And he's always had done a great job of introducing people to nature and making people more aware. But it's always been up to this point, this is nature, look how beautiful it is. But
Yeah.
it's nice that he's took such a stance. And, you know, he got quite emotional, and he even got angry at points, and said, look, this is a problem and it needs to be
And I've
addressed.
seen it. And like
Yeah.
when he was at the summit and, you know, he's talking, you can see, and he doesn't need to be, he's like well over the hill. He could be rocking in a chair to his heart's content, but he almost feels obliged because of the good life that he's had. He says, I've had a lucky life,
Yes.
that he should be doing this. I just think that's really admirable. I think the guy is absolute, as you said, absolute treasure.
Yeah, he really is. And it's such a great example of whatever field of life you're in, you should, you know, you're going to take from it and benefit from it and all the rest of it. And then your duty at the end of it is to give it back, you know, give back what it gave to you in your life. And if you can, leave it a bit better than when you walked into it. And I think if everyone took that approach and we all took that to what we bring to the world would just be a much happier place.
Yes, definitely. Right, let's soldier on, save the world now.
Done deal. Done deal.
Well, I'd have David Attenborough around the table. You know, we said about who do you have at a meal. I'm putting him on a chair now.
Old story here. When I was trying to get one of my first jobs, I went to WH Smith's and they did group interviews. And one of the question was, of all the authors who have wrote an autobiography, who would you like to go on a date with? And everyone was saying, you know, the hot woman, the hot guy, and all of this. And I said David Attenborough. Everyone burst out laughing, and I was like, I just think he'd actually be a nice conversation at a dinner table. Like, he'd have a lot more to say than Jordan or whatever you guys are going on about. So yeah, I'd agree with you. Put him at the dinner table.
I want to talk about the week and share a bit of that. How's your week been?
The week has been good. It's England, for anyone who's listening from abroad and isn't aware, we've moved into free stage of COVID secureness. So that's been interesting watching that unfold. In terms of my life, everything is kind of ticking along just fine. We're lucky enough, fortunate enough to be able to carry on business-wise. So that's a bit of a weight off. Shifting into the autumn, I felt that I got a little run down for a few days with the weather switching, but I'm kind of back on it now. So yeah, it's not been too bad. Yourself?
Yeah. I'll be honest, I've worn a grey shirt today. We're all usually black and white. I don't know if you noticed.
I did.
To just indicate that that's how I kind of feel. I'm a shade of grey at the moment. Like if you see me, if you want to get the bell ready, you know, teaching or ding, or if I, you know, met you in the street, then you'd have the same light as usual. You know, Mr. Positive plus exclamation mark. But this last week, I find it actually hard to explain. It's different to, we've spoken about this roller coaster, haven't we, of emotion with this whole COVID. It's not like something's happened. It's a collection of things. And I felt it coming on last week, and I've got really familiar over the years of grief and when it rears its ugly head. And it marks 14 years at the end of this month that my mum passed away suddenly. And it's not like I have those dates in the diary. We don't, light a candle. We don't do anything as such. We actually celebrate the birthdays and everything. But when something as traumatic as that has happened, you don't forget the time of year. And I didn't see a picture, didn't read anything. It just sort of comes over you. It's really hard to explain. And then there's a number of other things. I had like a couple of later nights where I stayed up watching something real late, and then I was sorting out some photos one night real late. And I think a few things then build up, and it's almost like walking around. The only way I can explain it, with a cloud over your head. A cloud with you. But the difference between, when we said like, oh, you're getting a little bit stressed about, COVID and work or whatever else, it's completely different to that. It's your brain, or I find my brain stops functioning. I at times I can't write properly, can't speak properly, can't think properly. You just go into this really weird state. And I felt it coming on last week, got to this weekend, and like I was probably running on a half tank Sunday, and then Monday it was like just complete plummet down. By the end of the day, I got myself back up, did a bit of teaching. Lauren's really supportive, and things like that helped. And then Tuesday, I would say I was about 50-50. Like I'd have a moment all right, a moment not all right. And like now I'm probably back to about 3/4 full. I feel like I've, jumped out. But looking back, I would have been in it for a bit longer and not realised. And you can overthink things. You start thinking about things that you've laid to rest you shouldn't be thinking about, and everything else. So I wouldn't usually share it, but I just thought, we talk about everything and anything, and not that I thought about it, but it ties in. It was Mental Health Week at the weekend, wasn't it? Or day for nationally. I just thought of sharing it.
No, I appreciate it, because that's how, I say I felt run down for 2 weeks, and I had a cold, but everything you've just said, pretty much word for word, I've gone through the same thing, and I'm very aware of it, that it happens to me seasonally. So like I've talked about, enjoying the sun, and I'm very conscious of when I think the last week of sun has come and gone, and that we're going to now just be in rain for the next 4 months. I'm all right with it, but for a week, my body kind of rejects it and says no, and it throws a bit of a tantrum. And that headspace thing that you said is very true. And I don't know if it's something that we should resist. I guess sometimes you just want to be 100% all the time, and that's just not the reality of life, is it? We're just not. You're not going to be up all the time.
No, like my experience, there's something happening. Like I said, this is different to someone banging into your car and you're getting pissed, or so. This is really different to anything like that. It's almost like there isn't an external force that causes it. It's an internal thing. Yeah. And looking back, mistakes I've made is trying to plow on through it, like to keep going. Like Sunday, I had a load of things I could have got ready for the week ahead. I had it all planned, what I was going to do, everything else. I basically just sat there all evening watching American football. And that's what I needed at that time. And yet, like Monday, I needed to do the class just to switch out of it, just to have a time away from it. And that was part of the coming out of it. I think if you overthink these things or feed it too much, like I've had a lot of experience with my father, who dealt with severe depression, and had a lot of experience talking to different people about it. And one, like the Mind group, when we went to see a counsellor there, he said that you've got to be careful you don't feed these things. And it's like people going to the doctors, it's like people ill and things like that. You can feed it, and that's what I think. From my own personal experience, you've really got to watch.
Yeah, it's also cycles, isn't it? Because I'd call us both type A personalities. We're quite, we go get it. We're happy to work. We're happy to put in the grind. And then sometimes the problem with that is like you said, you need a day of doing absolutely nothing. But you can talk to yourself at the end of that day and go, well, that was a waste of a day. You could have got this done. You could have got that done. And you start like down talking yourself. And
Yeah.
then that puts you in a cycle, because then you feel guilty that you didn't do all the stuff. Then you feel like you were being lazy. And instead of, like you said, you do a little bit to just pull you out of it for a moment to like ease you back into norm, you then either go really hard again and stress yourself out, or you loop back to feeling crap, and you do that again. And then you end up in like a 4 days of just not pulling yourself out of it. And I think that's where, I mean, I don't know, but I think that's where a lot of depressions and mental issues can begin. It
Yeah,
seems like a small thing and it snowballs.
the experience with my dad, like I would say, like I've seen it, pretty brutal firsthand. Well, I have for a number of years, and I would say I've probably all of us at some point deal with a bit of mental health, mental depression, or whatever else.
Yeah.
But that chronic, or whatever the word is, that severe depression where medication is needed, or further help, is the guy, whoever it was we saw, was explaining, it might have been another guy, how like my dad was dealing with things that were issues like we all deal with, be it, his thing was my grandparents, his mum and dad were getting elderly, and the dementia and things that come with that. And we're all dealing with something in the background, aren't we? Be it kids, be it business, or whatever else. So that has a toll. You're on edge. And then he was explaining, like, the death of my mum is what puts you over the edge. And something like that changes your circumstances. So we might have a bit of a problem with, or for instance, take my dad's problem with the grandparents, my grandparents, his mum and dad, but he could then go back home, he could vent it off to my mum, they could chat, they could, everything else, and then you're back in like your secure bubble. And what this guy was explaining is he didn't have that secure bubble anymore, because that bubble had gone, and he was still getting all the other crap. And it's like there's no shield now. You're just getting full on radiation of it.
There's no safe space.
Yeah, and that's something I think people have to really watch out for in real traumatic, or like for instance losing a partner, or God forbid a child, or something like that. It changes your day to day. I think until that point you should really sort of, for a better way, suck it up and find your way through it, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think so. I think I've tried to be really active in practicing gratitude recently, and to the point of writing things down. And it's little things, like the other day I got to go to the dentist. I actually managed to get an appointment, and I hate the dentist. I can't stand it. But I wrote down, I'm grateful that we have these services and I can go and get that done. And it's a little thing, but then it just stops you from becoming someone who looks at the world through a lens of, this is shit, this is crap, this is going wrong. And I think that's a really important part of it, is you reprogram your mind to how you look at the world, because you can choose to see it one way, you can choose to see it another. Extreme circumstances like a partner dying, it's very different. But I think in our general day-to-day, it's very easy to get caught up in a negative cycle. And I think something like just practicing some regular gratitude for the little things in life, and that's something COVID taught us when it all first came around, and we realized just how fragile everything we have is, and we're not as secure and safe as we all thought we were. I think, we take it for granted sometimes. We just got to be aware of it. But there's nothing wrong with being sad. There's nothing wrong with being upset from time to time. I think that's important as well. You've got to be allowed to feel that way.
I think some of it is needed, and I think my feelings are, like, when I feel this grey, are related to grief. I think the underlying, like, I've not been to see a psychologist and sat on a chair or lay back on a bench and spoke, but I think the underlying thing is grief, and everything else just sits on it and it weights it down even more. And I think you have to grieve. I think, it's been 14 years. I'll probably be doing it forever. I think you have to go through these stages, and fighting it doesn't help. And like right now, having a short convo about it, talking about it, really helps. I don't need to sit on the couch and have someone break it down for me. I've got my wife, and then great friends like you who I can talk to, and I think that's really important. And I actually now feel better for it. I feel like the little flower that hid away because it was all dark has now opened up a bit, and I'll go get in a white t-shirt again.
Ah, good man. I that's whenever you hear the advice about mental health, isn't it? It's a problem shared is a problem halved,
Yeah,
and just talk it out, because I think it's good for you to talk it out because you express it and you get it out from your head where it's just like a little
yeah,
tumble dryer going around. And then, they'll probably say something to you that resonates, or even if they don't say anything and they just sit there and you just feel their presence, I think that does a massive part of it.
yeah.
So, yeah, mental health is. I'm glad that it's getting more attention now, and I'm glad that, especially for men, I think we are getting more comfortable with talking about it and
Definitely. It's not a
acknowledging it.
taboo. It's not a taboo now, is it?
No, definitely less, which is a great thing. I'm glad to see that
Like we
happening.
were talking about Claire a little while ago, the other episode about suicide, and it's
Yes.
for instance like, well, you couldn't have ever said that, could you? It was like, oh, you don't, but it's something that is known now, isn't it? And it's discussed.
Yeah, and I think it needs to be. I think that's if it's discussed, then we can find solutions and we can figure out where it's coming from. If we all hide from it, then it's just going to happen in the background anyway. You can't just push it under the carpet. It runs to bigger issues down the line.
Yeah. So you did we spoke about saving the planet and our mental health. So do you want to do the first quote
Quote.
for us to finish it off?
Let's do it. Let me pull my one up. I had it saved. Come on, you. Where are you? Dun, dun, dun,
Always
dun.
look on the
Drum
bright.
roll, drum roll. Brrrr.
I
I
wasn't
want to
ready
find
either.
what's. That's all right. We're there. We're there.
I'm searching.
Dun, dun, dun. This is great podcasting here. Just a
Yeah,
moment of pure silence. But
absolutely.
people should get comfortable with silence. That's another thing, right? Right. I've got mine. This is kind of going off of the topics of what we had. I don't have one related. I'll get one related for next week, but I enjoyed this one. The best enemy of the good is the perfect. And the idea of this quote is that if you're going to wait to do something perfectly, then you're never going to do it. So you're better off starting something if you want to start something, do something if you want to do something, and be happy enough with good and strive towards perfection, rather than wait for the perfect moment or the perfect ability to do something and it never arrive and it never come. So in terms of our environment today, don't wait to be able to do everything to fix the planet, but just do something that's going to do a little bit of good. And if we all do a little bit of good, we'll get a little bit closer to perfect.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. And again, I've not heard that before. So
Voltaire.
I think you might have heard it. I'm pretty sure it's a quote. At what point does a quote become a speech or a legend, as it is, or something? So yeah, tell
Hit
me if
me.
this is a quote. You're well familiar with it. So a Cherokee legend, and it ties in with what we've been talking about today. I didn't have this planned. It just I thought, yeah, need to. This is one of my favourite ones. An old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. A fight is going on inside me, he said to the boy. It's a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false, pride, superiority, and ego. He continued. The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity. I can't even say the word.
Serenity.
That's the one. Humility, kindness, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith. The same fight is going on inside you and inside every other person too. The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather which wolf will win. The old Cherokee simply replied, the one you feed.
Excellent.
So is that still a quote?
I'd put it under quotes, and I think if we can go as far as quotes and legendary stories and myth, I think that's all in one. I think, yeah, that's one of my all-time favorites. The Wolf You
Yeah,
Feed is the one who survives. It just distills it very
yeah,
nicely, doesn't it?
yeah,
That mental health stuff, especially.
yeah.
There's
So
good and bad in all of us. We've got to decide what you're gonna give attention to, what you're gonna feed. Light side,
amazing.
dark side.
Yeah. On that note,
It was
have
a
a great
heavy
rest of your
one
week.
today, dude.
Yeah, yeah. We're always can't. Well, no, I suppose we've had a lighter, haven't we? We've had lighter.
I mean, last week we talked about our favorite sweeties, so yeah, we've done
Okay.
lighter,
It was
but it was nice.
yeah,
Sometimes the heavy stuff needs to be spoken about.
exactly, exactly.
Boom,
Always a
guys, give us
pleasure.
a like, give us a follow, and we will see you guys on the next one.
They can share it, can't they? They can share.
Share it, like it, comment on it, get involved, and keep the conversation going, please. Peace
Peace out.
out.